Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son get together and talk about fantasy, science fiction, and other nerdy things we enjoy. Just Jim coming at you today with a topic that I'm excited to share with you about. If you share that excitement once I've talked about this, be sure to like the episode down below. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so yet, and leave us some comments. We always reply. We've also got down in the show notes other ways you can interact with us, join us on our Discord server, social media, or even become one of our Patreon supporters. Thank you to all our Patreons. Welcome to all of you who have recently subscribed to us on YouTube, Spotify, or another source. YouTube here is our primary content location, but we are also dropping our episodes in audio format on Spotify, and through that, distributing it to all the usual haunts, Apple Podcast, Google Playlists, or Google Podcasts, or whatever they call all these various different audio streaming avenues. You can find us anywhere. If you do just listen to us in audio, though, we ask that you check us out on YouTube and subscribe there also. Help us get the word out, and now and then there'll be a live stream coming at you that you won't want to catch on audio. It'll be worthwhile to spend a little time watching our wonderful faces on the picture. We also like to be seen, I guess. Okay, enough about that. Today's topic. I'm a self-described completionist. This is true of life in general. When I start a project, I really hate stopping and leaving it half done. When I work through my emails, I want the inbox cleared out before I finish. Anything else, I'm like, ugh. I start some yard work. I can never just do a couple of things. I'm a sweaty mess when I finish because I keep seeing all the things that I've just got to get done now. It's pretty much how anything I work on works. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do everything that I can related to the topic, and that's how I find inner peace, my zen, my feng shui. I'm using these words horribly wrong, I'm sure. This is completely true of me with books as well. But in this regard, I think it's a little healthier aspect of my personality. As a reader, I get a ton of benefit out of my completionist tendencies. When I say completionist, in regards to books, I'm meaning once I start a book, I really want to finish that book. Once I begin a series, I truly have a goal to see it through to the end and get every novel, novella, and short story that's written in this series. And when I find an author I enjoy, I want to read all the author's works. Again, completionist, give it to me. All these books end up on my TBR, and it's part of why my TBR is so honkin' huge. But I've got a lot of goodness I'm discovering and encountering this way. You see, when you complete the entire collection of a series, you get the whole picture of what the author has done. I find this gives you a deeper appreciation of the creative work, a better understanding of just how amazing the foreshadowing and plot hooks were designed, and you get the joy of benefiting from the entire ride that the author designed for you. I mean, what would a Disney ride be like if you stopped before that last plunge or the final to-do on Space Mountain? You know what I mean? It wouldn't quite be the same. You want to see it all the way through. Completing a book, a series, author's complete works, that's what I'm talking about. That's where you get the best bang for your buck. Now, one additional benefit. You gain more expertise and authority in speaking critically about a work when you've actually read it all. People who are out there dissing a novel without taking the time to fully see it through, or bashing a series because they just didn't like book one, they're speaking out of their butt. They truly don't know the whole scope of what they're talking about. It's okay that they don't like a particular book, but they have no right now to be talking about the entire series because they don't know. I think that some of these booktubers can actually do harm to an author by unfairly judging them without consuming enough of the content to speak with authority. So if you do that, if you finish everything, now you have a right to talk. If I DNF something, on our channel, we generally then don't talk about the book or the series. We're like, just because we didn't like it doesn't mean somebody else might. We don't want to do harm to an author when we can't speak with 100% certainty of what we say. We'll leave it alone. We don't want to become a barrier between the fans that are out there for that type of book and the author who put in the work to create it. But again, once you've read the completion, spout away. You have earned that right. So now, let me get to the gold, I think, of this episode. I'm going to share a collection of 11 of the longest and or most epic SFF series that I believe I've read everything that's written. And I'm going to give you a ranking and a slight commentary on each of these. I required of myself a minimum of 10 books in a series before I would include it in this list. Now, some of these aren't yet complete. They're still over 10, but there's more books being written. But in that case, I have read everything that's come out so far, so I can include them. And I feel like because these are all completed by me, I can speak with some authority in my rating. And I'm, just literally ranking them 1 to 11. Because I'm giving you 11 of them. That's not necessarily saying how good or bad they are. It's just comparing them to each other. This is what I'm giving you. But I'll talk a little bit about each one as well and give you some thoughts. Now, I'm actually listing them in the approximate order of length. Now, I say approximate because this isn't by page length. This is by number of books, novellas, and short stories. They are not all equal. Some of these books may only have 300 pages and some may be over 1,000, but I'm just counting them as one each time. My episode, I make other rules. First off, The Chronicles of Amber by Roger Zelazny. This has 10 novels from start to finish. And of all 11 of them, I'm ranking this the 7th best. Chronicles of Amber is something I read early on in my science fiction and fantasy explorations. And it's basically the story of this one man who's just a regular Joe in our world who's suffering some amnesia. And as he works to recover his memories, he realizes he's actually not some regular Joe. He's a prince. He's a prince in another realm of reality, or perhaps all the realms of reality, of which our known world of Earth is just one level. And you can go up and you can go down in the levels, and he is a prince of this realm. How did he end up? Not at home, but stuck, abandoned on our world with memory loss? Well, that's at the crux of the story and his adventure of trying to recapture what he has lost and get back to his rightful place fills the 10 books. A lot of intrigue, a lot of adventure, definitely fantasy. You might say there's a little science fiction in there, but mostly it's a fantasy tale filled with intrigue, danger, action sequences, manipulation. Definitely enjoy me, The Chronicles of Amber. It's scheduled for a reread because I read this many years ago, over 30 years ago. And I know I will enjoy it more going back and reading it again. Next up, The Guardians of the Flame by Joel Rosenberg. This is also 10 novels, and of my 11 that I'm sharing here, this is the 10th best. It doesn't mean it's bad, just 9 of the others are better than this one. The Guardians of the Flame is based on a group of college students who like to game. And we're talking about traditional Dungeons & Dragons style gaming. They're very creative, they have fun with this, and they actually have somebody, a professor, who runs games for them, which is fantastic. Cool dude, right? Except he is not what he appears. And one time when they're gathered to play, they end up literally sucked into a parallel world, another dimension where they are now their characters. They have become their characters with all their experiences, knowledge, impulses, but at the same time, they have their own minds. They know who they are. They know this isn't right. And it starts out with a kind of an angst between, do they just go with the flow of how their characters would normally act, or do they try to be like themselves and figure out what's going on, and how do we fix this? How do we get out of this? This is cool. This is scary. Makes for a great adventure. And over the course of 10 books, you see what happens to them. It is not all pretty. Some of it's wonderful. Some of it's terrible. All of it's entertaining. These books start out strong. They get a little weaker as you get farther into the series, but I still enjoyed the entire read. Next, The Helldivers by Nicholas Sansbury Smith. This is yet another one that's 10 books, so just makes the threshold of being able to be included in something that I want to feature in my Completionist episode. The difference about this one compared to the first two I've shared, this is still being written. New books are being dropped, and I must admit it's very fresh compared to the others, because the most recent one just came out this year, 2023, and I have read it. This is fantastic science fiction with a little bit of a twist on fantasy, just because it's a bit fantastical. It's written in a dystopian future of our planet where we were idiots and nuked ourselves to pretty much obsolescence. I think I made that word up. And the world has become radioactive. The survivors of humanity are up in dirigibles, big blimps, but are with huge living quarters, and they're actually somewhat equipped to be warships up there. But all they've done, instead of being warships, they are the last bastions of humanity, the place where people can live out their lives safely, and have been doing so now for hundreds of years. None of these airships were designed to last that long, so it's been a challenge to keep them in the air, and in fact, there used to be many more. They're not all floating anymore. Their goal has been to stay afloat until the world becomes safe again, or they find some aspect of the planet that is healthy enough, less radioactive, so they can go down to it. But it's called the Helldivers because they are not self-sufficient entirely on these dirigibles. Sometimes they need replacement parts or special medicine, things they don't have, and someone's got to go down to the planet and get. And that's where the Helldivers come in. Very risky, very dangerous. Most people don't retire. They end up dying eventually on one of their missions. But as they say in the book, we dive so that humanity will survive. Great action adventure. Again, we've got messy humans. So there's intrigue, politics, betrayal, bravery, and sacrifice, all wrapped up in these. Really enjoy the Helldiver series. This comes in an 8th of all the ones I'm talking about today. Check that out if you haven't. I do have other content just talking about the Helldiver series. Now I'll add in the complete Chronicles of Thomas Covenant the Unbeliever by Stephen R. Donaldson. This is one Zach and I have had conversations about because he feels it didn't age well. And he's probably right. As little as, the crux of the beginning of the stories is you have a character who has leprosy. And that's a disease we can medically handle now. Although in some parts of the world, people still suffer from it horribly. But this guy was right here in the United States. And he's a leper. This is bad. So that whole badness of it, Zach was like, I don't see what the point is. Yeah. He struggled putting himself back in that time and place, I guess. Also, there's some content that happens in it that he found very offensive. He wanted to cancel. And again, you have to place yourself back at when it was written to appreciate and understand. And he's like, no, I don't want to place myself back there. So, okay, fine. I can understand and respect that. But I still thought this was really well-written fantasy fiction all the way through. I'd still recommend them. I know there are others out here, you've talked to me, that you really like these books. But again, there are some legit issues, so I'll only put them at 9th of my 11. All right, I'm getting bigger as I go, I said. So next one I'm going to talk about that I've done in completionist mode, The Wheel of Time, of course, by Robert Jordan, and completed by Brandon Sanderson using Robert Jordan's notes. This has 15 novels. Now that's 14 core novels and a prequel novel that's a little shorter than the rest of them. What an amazing ride. I don't have much to say that I don't like about this. I mean, this is one of my favorite fantasy reads of all time. Yes, there are some books where the action doesn't move along as fast as others. So, I've read these many times, and each time I read them, I actually appreciate those parts more than I did in the beginning. I didn't like the prequel when it came out. Nothing really super wrong about the prequel. I just didn't need the information. I wanted what was supposed to happen next in the story. But again, I've come to appreciate the prequel more now than when it was originally published. This rates number 2. So yes, I have something I'm going to share that I put above the Wheel of Time, people. It's coming, but you have to wait for it. Next up, The Sword of Truth by Terry Goodkind. I know a lot of people don't like these books and definitely don't like the author, but it's another long series that is meaty fantasy. 17 works in this set. That includes books and novellas. It starts out pretty strong. It weakens along the way. It doesn't finish well, in my opinion. It ranks 11th of my 11, kind of for that reason. It gets very dark, just for the sake of being dark. Not truly grim dark, just nasty dark. Twisted dark? I don't know. I don't recommend the Sword of Truth series necessarily. I don't regret having read it. It's part of what I have in my overall credentials as a fantasy reader. But of these, it's the least favorite. Next, The Expanse by James S.A. Corey, which, yes, is 2 authors. This has 18 works, which includes 9 core novels and then 9 more works that are novellas and short stories. This is solidly science fiction. Totally love this series. Great adaptation on Prime Video of The Expanse, and if you've only watched it, you really should go read these stories. They're a lot of fun to read. I've only read them once, but I've read them all once, and I've skimmed them again as I've done content on them, and you can find episodes on the entire Expanse series buried here on our YouTube channel. But this is a great one. Really love The Expanse. So much fun, great characters. Wonderful storyline where you cannot guess what's coming. And yet there are some great foreshadowings that are put in early that pay off later. Nice. And a wonderful ending. This is 3rd on my list, so right behind The Wheel of Time. Next, the Zombie Fallout series by Mark Tufo. We go up another level here. There are 23 works in this series, and it is still being written. These are books and novellas. I do have to admit, the most recent book I haven't read yet. It's the only one. I've gotten everything else, but the most recent one just came out a couple of months ago. It's on my list to read, but I've been reading a lot of other things. I will get to it soon. You guys know I love my zombie apocalypse type literature. This is the one I find the most entertaining and have just loved consuming. I've read a bunch of zombie apocalypse series to completion, many of them quite long, but this is the only one I'll put on this list. I could put a whole bunch of others, but you don't care. Many of you don't, at least. Zombie Fallout's worth checking out, but if you want to know more, look for our playlist on our channel here on Zombie Apocalypse. You'll see a number of episodes talking all about these kinds of books and this subgenre. So again, that 5th. It's higher than a bunch of these other ones I put in here because I really enjoy it. But in the end, it's kind of middle of the road. Let's move on to the Riftwar Cycle by Raymond E. Feist. 31 novels. These are all novels. No short stories, no novellas. 31 novels in this series. Classic fantasy fiction focused on Pug, who goes on to become a magician and perhaps the best and greatest musician. I don't think he sings. Best magician of all time. You call him a wizard if you want, but magician is the term, really, in this world. or shall I say worlds, because we learn along the way through this series that there are multiple worlds and ways to travel between, and that's part of the mysteries that are uncovered as we work our way through this series. This 31 novels also covers a breadth of time, so many of the characters you start out with are long dead and gone by the time the books end. But not all. And magic certainly has something to do with that, and just the magical essence of things. And why Riftwar? Well, it starts out with a rift, a way to travel between two worlds as worlds and cultures collide. Feist did a marvelous job writing this series. I definitely enjoy it, highly recommend it, and on my list, it is 6th. Now, why only 6th? Why is the Zombie Fallout series in front of it? Well, simply because it's a good series, but some of it I didn't enjoy as much as others. I definitely valued completing it. It felt like an accomplishment, but it wasn't necessarily the strongest of series as a whole. It has its great parts and it has its okay parts. Now we come to, I only have 2 left, the Shannara series by Terry Brooks. 41 works in this complete series. And those 41 works include books, novellas, and short stories. The Shannara series, starts out with the Sword of Shannara, and it stretched over 30 years of writing. Terry Brooks did do a few other things too, but this is the core of his work. It's classic fantasy involving humans, elves, trolls, gnomes, dwarves, but they are not what you think they are, because this is actually a dystopian tale. For those of you who've never read it, I'm not going to tell you more about it right now here because I don't want to spoil things, but it's definitely a world that's involved with magic and classic fantasy, and yet you find there's a deeper element to it that even involves a little science fiction. Worthwhile checking out. Criticism about the Shannara series is that Terry Brooks started to run out of ideas. And I can see why people say that. You get a little bit of repetition in this series because it's really a trilogy here, a quadrilogy here, then another trilogy, and some of the themes and story beats start to repeat. But I just thought it gave it a charm, a sense of comfort. You kind of knew this world and what you were experiencing, and he does keep throwing in new things, including way at the end. Some really unique, shockingly new aspects that he introduces in the final 4 books. Shannara series is number 4 of my entire list, which means the longest series that I've completed is also my number 1. The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. 54 works at this point. Yeah, that includes novels, novellas, and short stories. There's quite a few novellas and short stories included in this list, because of the novels, there's just 18 of them so far. But this is a strong number 1 for me. I get Jim Butcher's style of writing here, the humor he embeds in the series. I love Harry Dresden, the way he grows over the course of time, his personality traits, his quirks, and all of the creatures and paranormal things that Butcher has woven and continues to weave into elements of the story. It's engaging, it's a fun read, every book moves along quickly, and I'm eager to read the rest of the series as he keeps writing it. We anticipate maybe 6 or 7, maybe 8 more books, and who knows how many novellas and short stories, but we'll take whatever he brings. All right, those are my biggest accomplishments as a completionist. I have some other works that I've yet to complete, but I'm working on them, and they're worthy of honorable mention. So first I'll throw in there, I got 3 on this honorable mention list. The Dune Saga. How many of you have actually finished everything in the Dune Saga? It's by Frank Herbert originally, and then continued and completed by Brian Herbert, his son, and Kevin J. Anderson, who was a professional writer and worked with Brian to complete these novels. I've read all the core original stuff, but there were a lot of extra things that came out after I was done with Dune, and they weren't, that I didn't go back and read yet. So eventually I will get back to it because The whole scope of the Dune saga is fantastic to me, covering thousands of years, being science fiction with some strong fantasy leanings, and like nothing else I've ever read. Dune is not for everybody. Some find it too slow, too deep, too hard to comprehend. I did not, and thus loved it. So I'll get back to it. Another one, The Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey, with a few additional books that are later in the series, co-written between Anne and her son Todd. And then later on, after Anne passed away, Todd wrote some more books, and Anne's daughter, Gigi? I'm not sure on that name right now. I didn't look it up before doing this with you today. She's also got a book out there now. So the children continue to write this series. I've read the first 15 books, which does encompass the core storyline. But people loved this world. They loved the dragons. And so there were more stories to tell. And that's why there's another set of books. I think it goes out as far as 26 books. I'm going to get them all eventually. Zach and I were doing this as a book club read with people on Discord, but we ran out of steam. There was just too much else to read, and we were getting tired of just reading Pern. But I'll keep throwing one in every now and then until I'll get them all eventually. It's worthy, and I'm a completionist. I want it done. Another one here then is one I'm early in, Malazan, Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson, along with additional works written by Ian Esselmont. Currently, there are 34 total works in Malazan. These are novels and novellas, and they are still being added to. I am loving working through this at this time, although I've only read the first 4 of the core 10 novels. But I've seen nothing in them that convinces me I'm not going to absolutely love everything in it. So they are all on my to-be-read list. It's going to take a long time before I got them done, but why rush good reading? It's fun stuff. Now, honestly, sometimes a lengthy series just doesn't have enough in it to keep even a completionist like me staying the course. I kind of feel bad about that when that happens, because again, I want to finish, but sometimes I can't do it. It's just, nope, can't do it. And there are 2 major series that I'm going to list here that there are people out there, big advocates, people who love them, and I'm never going to complete them. So I'm not really bashing them. I'm just saying my preference, it's not going to happen. The first one is the Xanth series by Piers Anthony. There's over 40 books in this series. They are still being written because they still sell. I enjoyed reading a number of the early Xanth books, maybe as many as 12 to 15 of them, early in my fantasy reading days. They were full of puns, they were corny, they were somewhat inappropriate at times, and just a teenage boy yucking it up, enjoying reading these even into my early 20s. And then I kind of was like, these are getting shallow, and I moved on to better things. But if you're a Xanth fan, I'm not going to fault you. There's a lot of laughs in these fantasy books. They're kind of ridiculous, and they know it, and he just keeps figuring out other ways to be ridiculous some more. The other, a little higher level, although it definitely leans into the humor, and that's Discworld by Sir Terry Pratchett. 41 total works. This series is done because Pratchett has passed on. Again, there are whole podcasts who talk about Discworld, people who revere these books. They're just not my thing. His style, his humor, I get it. It's okay, but I don't crave it. I've tried 3 different times to read some of Discworld and had to power through to finish each book. I've never DNF'd a particular book, but I've not been compelled to want to read any more of them. So I'm never going to finish Discworld. All right, finally, to finish up my episode here, I want to show you some of the other goals, aspirations I have for lengthy series that I hope to complete. These are ones I have not started, but they've been added to my TBR. And because of the epic length of many of these, my TBR is, well over 1,000 books, around 1,300 right now. When you add series of the length that some of these are, it just balloons very quick. I have big hopes and dreams that each one of these series that I try, I'm going to fall in love with and I'm going to read all the way through. Is that realistic? Probably not. It might happen that I'll DNF. It also might happen some of these I'll just never get to because the TBR is too long. But I wish I could, because they all seem to have enough value in them that I put them on the list. What am I talking about? Here they are. If you've read any of these and have thoughts, feel free to share in the comments or find me on Discord and talk about it. Don't spoil them for me, but tell me why you love them. Or, nope, Jim, don't worry about it, cross it off, and here's why. All right. Again, I'm going to share these from bottom to top when it comes to length. Of course, I'm not ranking these because I haven't read them yet. And everything still had to be at least 10 books long to make this list. So start off with Frontlines by Marco Cluse, science fiction, 8 novels, 2 novellas. Then another science fiction work, The Culture series by Ian M. Banks, 10 novels long. More science fiction with some fantasy leanings, the Acorna series by Anne McCaffrey, Elizabeth Ann Scarborough, and Margaret Ball. 10 novels. They didn't all three write all 10 books. There were collaborations between different mixes of them. The Tide series by Anthony J. Melchiori, 11 novels. Cradle by Will White, 12 novels. That one I'll be reading sooner than some of these others. It's a bit higher on my TBR. The Cloud Warrior Saga by D.K. Holmberg, 12 novels. The Cal Leandros series by Rob Thurman. That has 10 works, including, 10 novels, and then 3 short stories, so 13 works overall. The World of Five Gods series by Lois McMaster Buchhold. 14 works, both a mix of novels and novellas. The Lazarus Codex by E.A. Copen. 13 novels and 1 novella. The Alex Verus series by Benedict Jacka. 14 works, and I don't know, these might still be being written too. The Honor Harrington series by David Weber, 16 novels. The Nightside series by Simon R. Green, some urban fantasy. I have read one of these, but I own more. I don't know why I didn't keep reading. There's 20 novels in the series, and he might still be writing them. The Iron Druid Chronicles by Kevin Hearn. There's 21 works in this series, including novels, novellas, and short stories. The Verkosigan Saga, another work by Lois McMaster Buchhold. 22 works in this complete series, a blend of novels and novellas. A recommendation then from Marguerite, our friend on Discord, is Skullduggery Pleasant by Derek Landy. There are 25 works in this series, novels, novellas, and short stories. Looks good. The Hollows by Kim Harrison, 28 works. Again, novels, novellas, and short stories. Got 3 left. They're getting bigger every time. Witch World by Andre Norton, 32 works. Galaxy's Edge and related series that are all interwoven in with the Galaxy Edge series by Jason Anspach and Nick Cole, 38 total works. And finally, the biggest one on my list, by just one, The Legend of Drizzt by R.A. Salvatore. There's 38 novels plus 1 short story. I don't know how I never read any of Drizzt. I don't know. It's all on the TBR to get to as I can. Okay, what am I missing, people? What incredible SFF series of epic length should also be in my TBR so this completionist can just have such joy and satisfaction? If you've got some favorites that have 10 or more in their complete set that you believe are worthy, let me know. Put it down in the comments here. Hit me up on Twitter, X, or other social media platforms where I'm at. Or, best of all, come join us on Discord and talk about books. Just please, for the love of Pete, not something that leads with romance. Not my jam. I can dig with some romance in a book, that's fine, but not where that's the driving force of it all. even if a lot of times that kind of is the driving force. You don't have to write it that way. Okay, that's my fantasy romance rant for you. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.